Hey everybody, happy Monday, and we are live today talking Wi-Fi, the present and future of Wi-Fi with the Wi-Fi Alliance. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing great, and it's awesome to be here.
Well, great to be here just in the back of CES where there was so much news and excitement, so we're going to dive into that. But maybe introduce yourself, and for those of you who didn't know, there's a Wi-Fi Alliance behind Wi-Fi. Maybe introduce the mission of the team.
Absolutely. And as you said, people aren't always familiar with Wi-Fi Alliance, but they're very familiar with the impact of Wi-Fi Alliance. So Wi-Fi Alliance is the worldwide network of companies that brought you Wi-Fi, made up of more than 900 different companies that are kind of the who's who in the connectivity space, everything from the chipset vendors that create the core technologies, all the way up to device vendors, infrastructure vendors, and even service providers that provide Wi-Fi connectivity. So I'm Kevin Robinson. I'm the president and CEO of the organization. I've been in this role for a little bit over a year, but certainly not new to the space. I've been with the Wi-Fi Alliance for a little over 15 years now, and really just seen the incredible growth of our industry coming on really to be at the advent of smartphones, if you can believe that, kind of with Wi-Fi making its way into phones, consumer electronics, and of course, pretty much in everything today. So that's a little bit about the organization and myself. And again, it's just an incredibly exciting time to be in the industry with the level of innovation happening.
Yeah, innovation indeed. I remember when the Wi-Fi standard first came out, that was
Mhm.
Ethernet replacement. Of course, it's so much more. Talk about the evolution of the organization, the standards, and that kind of journey. You've seen it all.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think famously you can kind of go back to the beginning of Wi-Fi, and there was this scene of Steve Jobs with with an Apple product with kind of like a hula hoop and showing like, look, no wires, and it was simply how do you get the internet to a device without that tether. And of course, Wi-Fi, I think most people still look at Wi-Fi as wireless internet because it moves more than half of all internet traffic around the globe, which is often surprises people. But it has really stayed ahead of that continuing demand for advanced connectivity. So it's still a quote cable replacement in a lot of ways. It's just the number of cables we're replacing. We're now up to almost a fiber replacement, right? So getting tens of gigabits per second to a device potentially with the newest generations of Wi-Fi, the ability to untether AR/VR headsets from your gaming console
Mm.
or from your smartphone. So again, very much in that vein of pretty much anything that you need to connect. Wi-Fi has the capabilities, the performance to do it, and we're constantly evolving to kind of stay ahead of the curve of what's demanded of us.
Fantastic. Give us a peek behind the curtain. How does the Wi-Fi Alliance assist, tech leaders in navigating all these standards and the complexities of interoperability and testing and
Mhm.
marketing? I mean, what's the idea behind the work you do?
Sure. So there's the standards themselves, which are essentially this is very simplified description of it, but it's essentially it's words on paper, right? And it's where you get companies, engineers around the globe coming together to agree on how certain things are going to be done, protocols, how technologies are going to be implemented. But it's the last part of your question that is kind of that final piece that is incredibly essential, which is the interoperability. It's how do you make sure that a smartphone from vendor A is going to work with a gateway from service provider B and printers and all of these devices? Because of course, there are very well I said there is no company that makes every category of product, right? So for
Mm.
connectivity to really exist, you need the ability for an incredibly diverse ecosystem of vendors for all these products to work well together. And that is really the core mission of the Wi-Fi Alliance through something we call Wi-Fi certified is to ensure that regardless of vendor, if you go out and buy a Wi-Fi product that has been certified, it is going to work well with other brands of Wi-Fi products. And it's frankly amazing that we can bring hundreds and hundreds of competitors together to collaborate to ensure that all of the products work well. Because at the end of the day, the market succeeds or fails based on all of these products working well together. And these competitors understand that they collaborate on the things that where there needs to be collaboration. And then, of course, they can differentiate on top of that. So that's really been, I think, some of the ingredients to success for the industry and for Wi Fi Alliance.
Yeah, brilliant. And describe the certification process, how it works. Is it mandatory?
Mhm.
And what to look out for as a consumer, a buyer of enterprise gear? What should folks understand about Wi-Fi certified?
Mhm. So Wi-Fi certified is an optional certification.
Hmm.
And there's goods and bads to that. I would say the positive side of it is the fact that it's optional. We as an alliance, Wi-Fi Alliance, needs to ensure that we are always delivering value around that certification, right? Because a vendor can choose not to certify, but I think through the work we do, we establish that demand for the certification. So particularly if you're in
Mm.
enterprise environments or where there might be RFPs for certain equipment, Wi-Fi certified can be a very important piece of that because of the value we deliver, ensuring that products have the latest generations of security standards, that they have that interoperability. And so that's really the key piece of it. And so again, almost every day, every week, every year, we as an organization need to make sure that our certification program is delivering that level of value so that the vendors out there see a reason to go through it. In terms of how we administer it, we actually have a global network of labs in
Mm.
obviously in Asia, US, Europe, that are the OEMs or the product vendors send their products through to make sure that they meet our requirements.
Fantastic. So interoperability, I think most people can appreciate. Talk about security. In the early days of Wi-Fi, it was kind of the Wild West. Lots of loopholes and challenges around securing Wi-Fi. We've come a long way, but what obviously more work is being done.
Mhm.
What does that mean in terms of Wi-Fi certified as well?
Sure, and security is one of those things that it's never done, right? Security is always evolving. It's a very dynamic landscape, and so it's important that our security protections are not standing still. So the current generation of Wi-Fi security is something called WPA3. There's a personal flavor and an enterprise flavor. Most people in their homes probably using personal, more of the passphrase, password based type of
Hmm.
authentication. And then in the enterprise, you have everything from using a SIM card that might be in your phone to using certificates or individual user credentials. But WPA3 is the most current version, and it really is the industry standard. It's what everybody from military to financial institutions, hospitals, they all rely on WPA3 to provide those strong protections. And even though we kind of focus on the generation, it's important to understand that even kind of below that generation, in the, let's say, behind the curtain, if you will, there are always updates that are happening in our testing that address, okay, are there potential vulnerabilities in one space? What are we seeing out in the security landscape that we can incorporate additional testing to check potentially for mistakes in the implementation? Because quite honestly, the protocols, these peer-reviewed, standardized protocols, are very robust. The trick gets into when somebody is putting it into their product that they don't inadvertently miss something. And that's where things like Wi-Fi certified can play a role in ensuring that those products actually deliver on that security promise.
Brilliant. Well, I will keep an eye out for that. So we're all hearing all the flavors of Wi-Fi.
Mhm,
A lot of discussion: Wi-Fi 6E versus Wi-Fi 7,
mhm,
the various states of rollout. Um, what are the capabilities that we should be aware of at a high level between 6E and 7? Maybe the legacy technology that's out there, and what does it mean for the consumer and the enterprise?
mhm. Well, so Wi-Fi Certified 7 is incredibly exciting. And in fact,
Mhm.
we announced Wi-Fi Alliance announced Wi-Fi Certified 7 just prior to the start of CES 2024.
Oh,
And
good timing.
already we're seeing incredible interest in demand and announcements around products that incorporate the latest generation of Wi-Fi. Now, what makes Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 similar is that Wi-Fi 6E was the introduction of this new 6 gigahertz spectrum into
Hmm.
Wi-Fi. So if people are familiar, the traditional Wi-Fi frequency bands were the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz spectrum. And that served the Wi-Fi industry incredibly well. In fact, it's frankly astonishing what the industry has been able to do with frequency bands that were essentially opened up decades ago, right? Yet we were able to kind of through innovation stay ahead of the curve in terms of connectivity demands. 6 gigahertz just completely changed the paradigm.
Mm.
Within the United States, that represents an additional 1,200 megahertz of spectrum. It's
Wow.
phenomenal. I mean, nothing. It's one of the most momentous decisions that the FCC, frankly, has made in a long time, and we're
Mm.
starting to see the fruits of that. So, Wi-Fi 6E, because it was such a momentous decision, we designated a special flavor of Wi-Fi 6 that incorporated the 6 gigahertz band. It introduced incredible capacity. So imagine very dense environments, something like a stadium where you have tens of thousands, or I live in Austin, so say the Longhorns, over 100,000 people fit in this college stadium, right? And when you're trying to provide connectivity and high performance connectivity, that capacity and that spectrum is essential. So that was really Wi-Fi 6E, multi-gigabit speeds, getting into much better latency performance, in addition to the high speeds, 9 gigabits per second possible to a single device. Now let's bring in Wi-Fi 7. As is always the case, we improve the performance, right? So theoretically, you're getting up to just under 40 gigabits per second, which is amazing. You're getting into
Mm.
3, 4, 5 gigabits per second to a handheld device potentially. And you can look at that and say, well, that's amazing. I don't quite have an application maybe yet that requires that. But when you then, let's say, take a step back and see the increasing number of devices. So it's not just performance to one device. It's how do I serve, let's say, in a university environment where I might have 50, 70 medical students trying to use VR to in a
Mm.
classroom to understand, okay, how is surgery going to happen, or just investigating the inner workings of the body through VR to serve multi-user VR. That's where that capacity and those high performances become incredibly important, even though one device may not need that full performance. So that comes in with Wi-Fi 7, of course, leveraging the 6 gigahertz band. But then the other really interesting piece is around deterministic latency. So by using all of these bands simultaneously, I say guarantee, you can predict with a very, very high probability, 99.99% likelihood of hitting very low latency numbers. And if you're not familiar, this is what ensures a good experience if you're on a video call or a voice call. If you're doing something like VR, where any type of lag can just really reduce the experience. And Wi-Fi 7 provides that deterministic latency. Also exciting is it lets Wi-Fi expand into these new areas like industrial IoT. Think,
Mm.
factory automation, where again, deterministic latency is incredibly important if you're looking at robots or something like that. So it really just expands the overall market for what Wi-Fi is capable of delivering.
Oh, it's so exciting. Healthcare, education, manufacturing, almost any
Mhm.
industry changed through this technology. You just got back from CES, so many announcements. It was really one of the highlights of the show. Any takeaways that were worth mentioning? Any call out any particular partners? I know you can't have favorites when it comes to your children there, but there was a lot going on.
There's a lot, and like the beauty of this is you really don't have to play favorites, because you walk
Mhm.
around the showroom floor at something like CS, the Consumer Electronics Show, and every turn you take, it's another Wi-Fi Alliance member, right? It's another Wi-Fi product. And I think the takeaway, the thing that I'm just always so encouraged by when I come back from CES is, again, the level of innovation and the way different companies and different Wi-Fi Alliance members are taking, let's say, a different spin on something, like their
Mm.
own take on how to harness those foundational capabilities that are delivered by the standard, the high performance, the deterministic low latency, and then building some new exciting application or service or product based on that. And just the diversity of the ecosystem. So, I mean, it's all great. There were a number of, just very specifically, there were a number of announcements around, Wi-Fi 7 access points,
Mhm.
gateways, a number of products. So just recently, some new handsets that were announced that include Wi-Fi 7.
Oh wow.
And we are literally, we're what, 2 weeks since we launched this program, and we're already starting to see a lot of these flagship devices incorporating the technology, and it really just bodes well for the rapid adoption that we expect to see in Wi-Fi 7, in devices, in your homes through your service providers, and it's just an incredibly exciting era for the industry.
Indeed, yeah, it was fascinating to watch. And of course, it sounds like your mission is also about getting companies to embrace and adopt the technology. It's one thing to have these amazing technologies available, but it takes time on the silicon, the software side. What can we do to accelerate that? For example, here I'm on this amazing gigabit connection. I think I have Wi-Fi 6E, and
Mhm.
it's a great connection. It's not quite gigabit speed on the Wi-Fi side yet, so there's some work to do, right, to upgrade the legacy technology that's out there.
There is, and it's a double-edged sword because one of the great things with Wi-Fi is that it's backwards interoperable with previous
Mm,
generations. And so the great thing there is whether it's a business, whether it's residential and consumers, it's really the user, the consumer, the network operator, right, that makes that decision about this new generation is delivering a set of capabilities that I value, that are worth the investment, and that drives the progression to the next generation, right? This is not forced
mm,
obsolescence. It's
mm,
really new demanding use cases that are driving the level of adoption. So I think what is probably most important, and particularly for organizations like the Wi-Fi Alliance, is highlighting what is possible through these new technologies. And maybe I'll identify kind of one key area where maybe we as an industry need to do a little bit better job, because we often can focus on, let's say, the high performance, the 40 gigabits per second. It can sometimes, let's say, create a perception that if you're a product vendor that doesn't quite need 40 gigabits per second or 10 gigabits per second with Wi-Fi 6, that generation is not for you. And so,
mm.
for example, we've seen incredible interest in the IoT segment around Wi-Fi 6. Why? Because of the experience it can deliver. Again, the things around latency, the reliability that comes with it. And by the way, Wi-Fi 7 also incorporates these elements of reliability because you can transmit on multiple bands. And those things, even if you're doing lower data rates, that might be incredibly important to the use case you're trying to deliver. So again, there are so many tools in Wi-Fi that often it can be hard to let's say to get somebody to understand this little feature that's down here that is critical for their use case, but maybe is not highlighted as much as some of the other flagship or marquee features. So that I think that's a challenge for the industry. But we have a lot of companies out there that are talking with their OEM customers, helping them understand the benefits. And when you look at, let's say, just an example in residential, the increase in broadband speed. So as we
Mm.
speak, they just finished putting fiber outside my door. As soon as it's offered, I'm getting hooked up, right? Some of these fiber operators are offering 3, 4, 5 gigabits per second. So again, it will be here before people know it.
Indeed, so exciting. Uh, Give us a snapshot of how the Wi-Fi Alliance collaborates with its various stakeholders and the regulators and different tech leaders. You have your own events and meetups and get-togethers. How does that work?
Sure. So there's a lot. I would say that the core work of the alliance, which is getting companies, we really serve as an industry forum, right? So
Right.
getting these leading companies together to coalesce around what is going to be each subsequent generation of Wi-Fi or some of the other technologies we're developing. What are those important features that need to be there? We have representation from the automotive segment, other IoT
Mm.
segments, operators, and it's this forum where companies are coming in. They're talking about the challenges that they're seeing and kind of their vision for their products and some of the technical challenges that maybe are getting in the way of delivering that vision. That happens at what we have meetings that are all over the globe 3 times a year. So we'll be in Singapore in a few weeks. Following that, we'll actually be in Austin with a big celebration around a major anniversary for us, really all this year, and then we'll be in Spain and later in the year. So these are kind of our standard recurring set of meetings where a lot of this collaboration is happening. And of course, there's a lot of meetings more virtually that are happening in between those. So that's really just one, that's a kind of core aspect of what we do. But we're also very
Fantastic.
involved in, we've got to get out there and talk to regulators. We have to make the case
Mm.
for the full 6 gigahertz band. It's great that the US has 1200 megahertz. And there are other countries that do as well. South Korea has opened up the full 1200 megahertz, but there's work to do in areas like Europe. They have the lower portion of the band, and there's a case. We need to make that case for the upper portion of the band for Wi-Fi. And there's a lot of work that happens there, not so much in big meetings or events, but just really sitting down with regulators and stakeholders. The fiber community is a critical stakeholder in Europe, right? If they're doing these huge fiber deployments, it's if they're not getting good Wi-Fi, the investment in the ROI on the fiber deployment is going to be diminished. So it's really just a lot of interacting with the broader ecosystem, which can frankly be a challenge given the number of segments and industries that Wi-Fi touches. It's literally everything, so you got to kind of prioritize, find those areas that benefit the most from the engagement, and just place your effort there.
Phenomenal. Well, we started the year with kind of a big bang with CES and Wi-Fi 7. It's kind of hard to top that, but what are you looking forward to the rest of the year, travel-wise, technology-wise? What's on your radar?
Again, I think that the biggest things on the radar for this year are, now that we have Wi-Fi certified 7, which anytime you have a Wi-Fi certified generation coming out, that really serves as the inflection point for mass market adoption. It's going to be a lot of getting out there, driving adoption within the industry, making the case to customers and the users of Wi-Fi for why they really need to be looking at that next generation of Wi-Fi. So really looking to drive the adoption so that consumers and businesses get the greatest possible benefit. A lot of focus on the next steps in the regulatory space and making that case around the full 6 gigahertz band. And then we're the work never stops. I'll just say that. So there's a lot happening within the alliance, just to kind of build on what we are already delivering with Wi-Fi 7. New capabilities for different segments out there. So yeah, the work never stops. You celebrate the win when you have something like Wi-Fi certified 7 going out, and then our members immediately pivot, put their focus on the next great innovation, and that's really what 2024 is going to look like.
Fantastic. Well, it's going to be an exciting year for sure. Just a final note, I was doing my research before the show, and I noticed you started your professional life in the U.S. Army through West Point. That's phenomenal. Thank you so much for your service there. Do you carry some of your thinking from West Point, from the Army? How has that shaped your professional journey?
Absolutely. It's definitely different. I'll say this in many ways, military versus being in the tech space, and particularly in Wi-Fi. I think the one thread that's really carried me through with both elements of my career is, the Army, you tend to be very focused on something bigger than yourself, right? And it's about
Mm.
the mission, the people around you, them being above you, the mission, and what you're trying to accomplish being above you. And interesting enough, it's when I went into the Wi-Fi Alliance, I think it's the one thing that really kept me engaged here, because while we're absolutely focused on commercial success of our industry, when you actually get into it with the people that are doing the work within the Wi-Fi Alliance, you get that same sense of higher purpose, right? When there are very few technologies where you can get out there, into the market and just interacting with everyday people, where the technology that you're delivering has an everyday impact.
Mm.
When you go and talk to people about their experience, let's say during the pandemic, and how Wi-Fi is what kept them connected to their family, how Wi-Fi kept them connected to their schools, to their healthcare providers, right? Virtual. My kids today still do virtual appointments, often with healthcare,
Mm.
and it's just so rewarding. And you can say, you know what? Yes, we're driving commercial success, but we're also delivering towards something that is much bigger than ourselves. It's going to outlast us. When we're all long gone, Wi-Fi is still going to be having an impact on the world. And so again, that's the one thing that I've been blessed to, kind of have aspects of that in throughout my entire career. And it's just, again, it's what's made being with the Wi-Fi Alliance so fulfilling.
Well, phenomenal, very motivational. Thanks for that insight. And yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, everyone. Reach out to the Wi-Fi Alliance, follow them on social media. They have a tremendous amount of great content and onwards and upwards. Thanks, Kevin.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, everyone.